The air in the hangar was a physical presence. A cold, heavy blanket thick with the metallic tang of aerosolized jet fuel, and the sharp, clean scent of ozone. It was an industrial perfume that clung to the back of the throat, a taste of steel and electricity that never quite left. Wind, a keening phantom, whined through unseen gaps in the cavernous, skeletal structure of Hangar 7. Its low, mournful sound, a requiem echoing off the vast, oil-stained concrete floor. This was the private, forgotten edge of Tempelhof Field, a ghost airport for a ghost meeting. History had come here to die during the airlift. Its heroic echoes long since faded, and now the place served as a crypt for secrets too toxic for the light of day. A brutalist cathedral of forgotten things. Klaus Richter, Germany's Minister for Energy, was not a ghost. But he looked like a man who had seen legions of them and was expecting to join their ranks momentarily. He was terrifyingly real. His face the color of old parchment stretched tight over the sharp, aristocratic bones of his skull. His bespoke Brioni suit, usually a testament to his meticulous, almost obsessive nature, was rumpled and creased as if he'd slept in it for a week on a train station bench. A silent testament to a night spent wrestling with damnation. He held a tablet, a sleek, minimalist Stark Industries model favored by the German cabinet, in a hand that trembled with a fine, uncontrollable tremor. The screen's cold blue light cast stark, skeletal shadows across the raw panic in his eyes, turning them into dark, bottomless pools of despair. "They sent it an hour ago," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp, the sound of dead leaves skittering across pavement in a winter wind. "To my private mail, and to my wife's, to Anna." The mention of his wife's name seemed to break something vital in him, a fresh wave of despair washing over his features. His shoulders, usually so straight and statesmanlike, slumped as if under an immense, invisible weight. She saw the notification, the subject line. She didn't open it. She just looked at me. The look in her eyes, Thorn. Got him, Himmel. Alec Thorn took the offered tablet. Its brushed aluminum case was frigid, leaching warmth from his fingers as if it were a shard of the abyss it contained. He didn't need to ask who they were. In his line of work, a shadow profession that existed in the gray spaces between diplomacy and warfare, they always meant the same people. The ones who operated where governments feared to tread, who weaponized shame and manufactured sin with the cold, sterile efficiency of a slaughterhouse assembly line. On the screen, a video was paused on a still frame. The image was of Richter, his familiar, statesman-like features twisted into a grotesque leer, an expression of such predatory vileness that it seemed to belong to another man entirely, a monstrous doppelganger. He was in a lavish hotel room, a fever dream of rococo excess, gilt furniture, crimson velvet, and a ridiculously ornate chandelier that glittered like a spider spun from crystal and gold. And on the bed, there was a child, a boy no older than 10, his face turned away from the camera, a small, vulnerable shape against the opulent backdrop. The image was sickeningly, flawlessly real. "Play it," Alex said. His voice was calm, a low baritone that seemed to absorb the ambient panic in the hangar rather than reflect it. It was a voice engineered for moments like this, stripped of all emotion save for a quiet, implacable authority. Richter flinched as if struck by a physical blow, a harsh, guttural sound escaping his throat. "I can't." "Got him, Himmel. I can't watch it again." With a deliberate, steady thumb, Alec pressed the triangular play icon. The scene unfolded with a nightmarish, liquid fluidity. The video was short, less than 30 seconds, but it was an eternity of damnation. The lighting was perfect. A soft, warm glow from the bedside lamps that caught the subtle sheen of sweat on the monster Richter's brow. The shadows moved with perfect fidelity. The subtle shift of his weight on the mattress, the reflection of the room in his pupils. It was all there. There was no sound. A creative choice of profound cruelty that made it worse. A silent, damning pantomime that invited the viewer to imagine the horrors unspoken. Alec watched it through once, his face impassive, a mask of stone. Then he played it again. His gaze was no longer that of a horrified spectator, but of a forensic analyst, detached, analytical, searching for the seams, the digital tells, the fractional rendering error that would betray the artifice. He looked for the uncanny valley flicker in the eyes, the unnatural smoothness of the skin where the digital mask was grafted, the slight spectral dissonance that even the best algorithms sometimes left behind. He found none. This wasn't the clumsy work of amateurs using open-source software. This was a masterpiece of malice, a symphony of character assassination forged in the silicon heart of a quantum-capable supercomputer. This was FSB grade. This was Section 16. "It's a deepfake," Alex stated, handing the tablet back. It wasn't a question. It was a diagnosis delivered with the finality of a terminal illness. "Of course it's a deepfake," Richter hissed, his composure finally shattering into 1,000 pieces. He began to pace, his expensive Santoni leather shoes squeaking a frantic rhythm on the dusty floor. "My God, Thorne, I was in Brussels for the Energy Summit all last week. I have 1,000 witnesses, aides, diplomats, journalists. My schedule was minute by minute. But look at it. Just look at it. Who would believe me? Who would even bother to listen past the first 30 seconds? The moment this touches the internet, my life is over. My career, my family, Anna. Everything will be incinerated." Alec nodded slowly, his mind already moving past the immediate shock and onto the cold geometry of the problem. He was mapping the battlefield, identifying the enemy's positions, calculating his response. What are their demands? Richter stopped pacing and swallowed hard, a raw, clicking sound in his throat. He ran a hand over his thinning gray hair, leaving it in disarray. "The vote is in 48 hours. The North Atlantic Energy Security Pact. The American LNG terminal contract. It's my life's work, my legacy. I am to announce my immediate resignation, citing personal health reasons. Then, I am to issue a public statement recommending a full and comprehensive review of the pact, effectively killing it for this legislative session. If I do that, the video vanishes. If I don't, they will release it to every major news outlet, every social media platform, every dark corner of the web simultaneously." There it was, the gambit, elegant in its sheer, unadulterated brutality. The American LNG deal was Berlin's final, definitive break from Russian gas dependency. It was more than a contract. It was a declaration of economic independence, a geopolitical dagger aimed at the heart of the Kremlin's primary source of leverage over Western Europe. Klaus Richter was the deal's architect and its most powerful champion. Removing him and scuttling the pact wouldn't just be a political victory for Moscow. It would be a strategic realignment of the entire continent, ensuring Germany remained shackled to the pipelines snaking west from Siberia for another generation. 48 hours, Alec repeated, the words hanging in the cold air, condensing into a visible puff of white. It wasn't a deadline. It was a countdown to a public execution. He looked at Richter, a fundamentally good man, a dedicated public servant, caught in a perfect 21st century trap. The traditional tools of power, lawyers, press secretaries, government agencies, were useless here. Denials would be drowned out by the digital roar of public outrage. A full forensic analysis would take weeks, months even, and by then, the court of public opinion would have already passed its verdict. The mud, once thrown, would never wash off. This wasn't an assassination of the body with a bullet or a bomb. It was an assassination of the soul, and it was infinitely more effective. "This video cannot exist," Richter pleaded, his voice cracking, the primal desperation of a drowning man in his eyes. "You have to make it not exist. Erase it from the world." Alec's firm, the directorate, didn't have a public name or a listed office. It was a phantom entity, a whisper among the powerful, a phone number passed on a folded napkin for when their problems became existential. They were not spies in the traditional sense. They were fixers, ghost catchers, surgeons who operated on the cancers growing in the blind spots of international law and conventional espionage. And Alec Thorne was the chief surgeon. "Making this one copy not exist isn't enough," Alec said, his mind already working 3 steps ahead. "They have the source files, the rendering engine, the AI model that built it. They can generate 100 more, each one slightly different. Deleting one instance is like swatting a single mosquito in a swamp. We have to go to the source. We have to find the artist, find his studio, and burn it to the ground. Digitally and, if necessary, physically." He pulled out his own device, a hardened, featureless black slate with no visible branding or ports, a CypherLink X2. It was a bespoke piece of hardware, utterly impenetrable. Its quantum encryption processor, a state secret in its own right. With his thumb, he typed a single, heavily encrypted message. "Oracle. Ghost. Berlin. Protocol Black." Protocol Black was reserved for threats that targeted the foundational integrity of a state actor. A designation that authorized unlimited operational expenditure and sanctioned extreme measures. Within seconds, 2 discrete green confirmation dots blinked back on the screen. The machine was in motion. "Go home, Klaus," Alex said, his tone shifting from analytical to commanding, the voice of a doctor taking charge of a critical patient. "Act normally as you can. Talk to your wife. Tell her you're under attack, that it's political, but tell her nothing more. Don't change your routine. Don't cancel any appointments. Don't look over your shoulder. They will be watching for any sign of panic or deviation. The only way we can hunt them is if they believe their prey is docile and walking calmly toward the slaughterhouse." Richter looked at him, his eyes searching Alex for a promise he couldn't possibly give. "Can you do this? Can it be done?" "What you're asking isn't about can," Alec replied, his eyes like chips of flint, cold and hard and absolute. "It's about cost. And for you, the cost of failure is everything. So we won't fail." The first member of his team arrived not in person, but as a disembodied voice in his earpiece. A secure quantum-encrypted channel slicing through Berlin's crowded 800 megahertz spectrum like a scalpel through silk. "Oracle is online," the voice said. It was crisp, female, with a faint, almost imperceptible trace of a St. Petersburg accent, a ghost of a life she had systematically erased. From her sterile command center in a soundproofed London basement, surrounded by a constellation of glowing monitors, Anya Petrova, call sign Oracle, was already at work. "Received the package from the client. I've run a preliminary analysis. The file is impressive, frighteningly so." "Any tells, Anya? Anything at all?" Alec asked. He was in his car now, a nondescript Audi A8 that was anything but. Its civilian shell hiding a composite armored body and a suite of signals intelligence gear. He was gliding silently through the pre-dawn streets of Charlottenburg. The city's imperial grandeur, still cloaked in shadow and amber light. Negative. The compression artifacts are flawless. The GAN stitching is seamless. There are no spectral dissonances in the metadata. They used a cascaded diffusion model, layered over a neural radiance field. This isn't just a face swap, Alec. They built a complete, photorealistic 3D model of Richter's head and upper torso and puppeteered it like a digital marionette. The source data required to train the model would be immense. Hundreds of hours of high-definition video footage of Richter, press conferences, interviews, parliamentary speeches, every angle, every expression, every micro-frown. They've been building this weapon for months, Alec murmured, the scale and patience of the operation settling in like a shroud. Longer. The algorithm itself, it has a signature, a kind of digital fingerprint in the code's architecture. It's elegant, viciously efficient. I've seen it before. Once. In a compromised GRU server analysis from the Chechnya hack in '09. It was just a prototype then, a ghost in their machine. This is the mature work of Section 16 of the FSB, the Directorate for Special Programs. This is Viktor Orlov's playground. The name landed in the quiet car like a block of granite. Colonel Viktor Orlov, the architect. A man who saw geopolitics not as a game of chess, but as a slow, meticulous process of demolition. He didn't just defeat his enemies. He unmade them, erasing them from history, turning their legacies to ash and salting the earth where they once stood. So Orlov is the artist, Alex said, his knuckles white on the leather-wrapped steering wheel. Now we need to find his studio. Working on it, Anya replied. The soft, rapid click-clack of her custom mechanical keyboard, a sound Alec could identify as readily as his own heartbeat, was a faint, reassuring rhythm in the background. The file was delivered via a multi-hop onion router, bounced through a dozen compromised servers from Brazil to North Korea. Standard procedure for plausible deniability. But they're arrogant. Orlov's people always are. They always leave a trail, no matter how faint. They used a custom encryption wrapper on the final delivery packet. It's a variant of AES 256, but with a proprietary salt key. It's their calling card, and it has a flaw. A tiny, almost theoretical vulnerability in the key exchange handshake. If I can stress the server that sent the final packet, the final exit node, I might be able to force a key renegotiation and capture a fragment of the unencrypted handshake. It's a 1 in a million shot. What do you need? Power, a lot of it. I need to spin up the Directorate's server farms in Iceland and Virginia and turn them into a globally distributed botnet aimed at a single point on the map. I need to hit the exit node with a terabit-level DDoS attack for precisely 1.78 seconds. Not more, not less. Any longer, and their automated defenses will black hole the node and reroute. Too short, and I won't generate enough packet collisions to get the handshake fragment. It's like trying to photograph a bullet with a pinhole camera while riding a roller coaster. You have it, Alec authorized without hesitation. Light it up. While Anya hunted the digital ghost, Alec's focus turned to the physical world. He met Marcus Vance in a small, all-night cafe near the Zoologischer Garten station, a place that smelled of stale Gauloise's smoke, bitter, overbrewed coffee, and quiet desperation. Marcus, callsign Ghost, was a man who seemed to defy physics. He was tall and built like a decathlete, but he moved with a preternatural quietness, his presence fading into the background like a watercolor in the rain. A former trooper with the 22nd Special Air Service Regiment, he'd spent a decade in the shadows of places that didn't officially exist, doing jobs that were never acknowledged. He was the directorate's eyes and hands on the ground, the man who translated digital threats into physical realities. "Orlov's in play," Alex said, sliding a cup of black coffee across the worn Formica table. No sugar, no cream, just how Marcus took it. Marcus didn't react, his face a calm, unreadable mask. He simply nodded, absorbing the information, as if Alec had just commented on the weather. That means a full support team. At least a 4-man cell minimum. A handler, a technician, and 2 field ops for surveillance, logistics, and close protection. They'll be operating out of a sterile apartment, likely in a district with a high transient population and spotty municipal surveillance. Pankow, maybe Neukölln, somewhere they can blend into the noise. "The embassy on Unter den Linden?" Alec asked, testing. Marcus shook his head, a barely perceptible motion. Too obvious. Too much BND and BFV scrutiny. Orlov doesn't work that way. He'll use diplomatic cover for his cutouts and dead drops. But the operational hub will be completely detached, firewalled from any official presence. He'll have his handler, probably under journalistic or cultural attaché cover, run the day-to-day. The tech will be deep cover, maybe posing as a university student or an IT consultant. The muscle will be ghosts, non-official cover, brought in for the job and gone a week later. They probably don't even know who they're working for, not really. "We have less than 42 hours to find them," Alex said, the words a stark reminder of the ticking clock. "Then we start with the handler," Marcus replied, taking a slow sip of his coffee. He held the cup with both hands, warming them against the morning chill. "Orlov will need to communicate. He won't use electronic means for primary command and control. Too risky, too easy to intercept. He'll use a number station broadcast on a shortwave frequency as a fallback. But for active direction, he'll use brush passes and dead drops. Old school, reliable. His handler will have to be on the move. We pull the manifest of every accredited Russian diplomat who arrived in Berlin in the last 3 months. We cross-reference that with known SVR and FSB personnel lists from our databases. We find our man, we put eyes on him, and we wait for him to lead us home. It was classic, painstaking tradecraft. The kind of work that involved endless hours of sitting in cars that smelled of cooling coffee and stale air, of following targets through crowded U-Bahn stations, of memorizing faces and gates and routines, all for a single moment of opportunity, a single mistake. While Marcus began the laborious task of building a target list, Anya's digital assault began. From a geothermal-powered server room buried under a volcano in Iceland, a torrent of junk data, a digital tsunami, screamed across the globe. It hammered a nondescript server in a data center in Vilnius, Lithuania. For 1.78 seconds, the server's processors redlined, its fans screaming like jet engines as its defenses were overwhelmed by the sheer, brute force of the attack. And in that sliver of time, it faltered. A single packet of data, a tiny 256-bit fragment of the encryption key, was transmitted in the clear. It was a whisper in a hurricane, but it was all Anya needed. "I have it," her voice crackled in Alex's ear, laced with the quiet triumph of a master craftsman. The handshake fragment. It's not much, but it's enough. I can use it to reconstruct the salt key. It's like finding a single fossilized vertebra and rebuilding the entire dinosaur. Give me a few hours. The clock was ticking. 36 hours remaining. Marcus had winnowed the list of potential handlers to 3. The most promising was a man named Dmitry Volkov, the 3rd cultural attaché at the Russian embassy. He was young, ambitious, and his diplomatic record showed a suspicious number of postings in hotspots like Kiev, Tbilisi, and Damascus just before major political upheavals. He was also, according to Directorate Assets inside the SVR, a personal protege of Orlov himself. Marcus set up a mobile observation post in a battered VW transporter van across from Volkov's upscale apartment building in Prenzlauer Berg. He watched. For hours, there was nothing. Volkov followed a simple, boring routine, a morning jog in the Volkspark Friedrichshain, a trip to a local bakery for bread. Then, at 11 a.m., he left his apartment carrying a slim leather briefcase. He didn't take his car. He walked. "He's on the move," Marcus reported, his voice a low murmur into his throat mic. He slipped out of the van, pulling on a worn jacket and a baseball cap, and fell into step 100 meters behind Volkov, instantly melting into the city's pedestrian traffic. Standard surveillance detection route. He's doubling back, using shop window reflections. He's a pro. This is our man. The chase was a silent ballet of espionage. Volkov led Marcus through the bustling crowds of Alexanderplatz, onto a crowded S-Bahn train, off again at Friedrichstrasse, through the chaotic ground floor of a Galeria Kaufhof department store, and out a side exit onto a quiet street. He was testing for a tail, trying to force a mistake, to see who followed him through the choke points. But Marcus was a ghost. He anticipated the moves, using the city's rhythm as his cover, handing off primary surveillance to a second directorate operative at key junctions to avoid being spotted. Finally, in the Tiergarten, the vast park in the heart of Berlin, Volkov made his move. He sat on a bench near the Soviet War Memorial, its hulking granite form a stark reminder of another era of conflict. He began, ostensibly, to feed pigeons from a small paper bag. A moment later, an old woman in a drab overcoat, her face a mask of weary indifference, sat at the other end of the bench. They didn't speak. They didn't look at each other. After a minute, the woman got up and left. Volkov remained for another 5 minutes, then stood and walked away, leaving a folded copy of the Berliner Zeitung on the bench. A classic dead drop. Marcus didn't move on the newspaper. That was for amateurs. The signal, the real message, had been passed. The target was the old woman. The second operative shadowed her, while Marcus stayed on Volkov to ensure he wasn't making a second contact. The woman took a circuitous route to a U-Bahn station, rode the U2 line 3 stops north, and got off in the working-class district of Pankow. She entered an old, gray, anonymous Plattenbau apartment building, a concrete relic of the GDR. She didn't come out. "We have the nest," Marcus reported. Alex stood in their own temporary headquarters, a high-tech command center hidden behind the minimalist walls of a luxury loft overlooking the Spree River. On a massive screen, a live satellite image of the Pankow building was displayed, alongside architectural blueprints pulled from city records. "Anya, what have you got?" Alec asked, his voice sharp. "I'm in," she said, her voice tight with concentration. "The salt key gave me a way in. I cracked the server in Lithuania. It was just a relay, as expected. From there, I tunneled through to the real command server. It's in a hardened facility in Yasenevo, outside Moscow, sitting behind the FSB's main firewalls. I'm seeing the file structure now. They call the project Nachtfalter, Moth. It's Orlov's signature. He loves poetic code names for his dirty work. I found the raw video files they used to train the AI. Hours and hours of footage of Richter. But the deepfake itself, the algorithm, the master file, it's not here. It's being held locally, at the operational site, air-gapped most likely. They'd only connect it to the network to receive updates or transmit a new product. That apartment in Pankow, that's not just the nest, it's the studio. The pieces locked into place, with a satisfying, chilling click. The Moscow server was the library. The Pankow apartment was the factory. And the file they needed, the only thing that could definitively prove Richter's innocence and expose the entire operation, was inside that factory, on a machine that was almost certainly disconnected from the internet. 28 hours left, Alex said, looking at the atomic clock on the wall. Marcus, we need to get inside. We need the layout, the team's routine, their security protocols. Already on it, Marcus replied. He was now in a different observation post, a rented room in a building opposite the target apartment. He had a high-powered telescope with a thermal imaging lens pointed at the window. I count 3 heat signatures, 2 male, 1 female. The old woman from the park is their logistics runner. One of the men is the technician. He hasn't moved from a desk in the back room for hours. The third is the muscle, the sentry. He keeps watch by the front window. He's armed. I can see the bulge of a pistol under his jacket. Looks like a Stechkin APS, a favorite of Spetsnaz units. 20-round mag, capable of full auto. He's not just muscle, he's a pro. The handler, Volkov, isn't there. He's the cutout, he'll stay clean. For the next 10 hours, Marcus watched, building a pattern of life. The team was disciplined. They had food delivered by a courier who left it in the hallway. They never left at the same time. The sentry did a physical sweep of the hallway every 2 hours, on the hour. The technician seemed glued to his chair, bathed in the glow of his monitors. "There's our window," Marcus said late that night, his voice a low whisper. At 0200, the sentry leaves. He's gone for exactly 30 minutes. Probably a face-to-face check-in with Volkov at a secondary site. The technician and the runner are asleep. That gives us a 30-minute window to go in. It's not enough time to search the apartment and crack a military-grade encrypted computer, Alec countered. We don't have to, Anya's voice cut in. If Marcus can get inside and plug a device into the technician's machine, I can do the rest. I've designed a little present. Call it the Mayfly. It's a USB device, looks like a generic thumb drive, but it contains a terabyte solid-state drive and a powerful microtransmitter broadcasting on a tightly focused 60 gigahertz frequency. The moment it's plugged in, it will start copying the entire contents of the target machine's hard drive. Simultaneously, it will broadcast a high-frequency, encrypted signal. The 60 gigahertz band has a very short range and can't penetrate walls well, which is a feature, not a bug. It means their own SIGINT sweeps are unlikely to detect it from outside the apartment. But I can pick up that signal from here and piggyback on it, creating a direct wireless connection to the machine. I can own it remotely, but Marcus has to get it in there. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. It relied on split-second timing and flawless execution. The city was quiet when Marcus moved. Dressed in matte black tactical gear, he was a shadow flowing across the street. He scaled a drainpipe to the roof of the adjacent building, his movements fluid and silent as a whisper. From there, he used a carbon fiber rope to rappel down to the correct floor, landing on the narrow ledge outside the apartment's kitchen window with the soft thud of a hunting cat. The window was locked. Marcus pulled a small suction cup from his belt, attaching it to the glass. He used a diamond-tipped scribe to score a perfect circle, then gently tapped it. The circle of glass came away with the suction cup, creating a silent entry point just large enough for his hand. He fed a fiber optic camera through the hole, its tiny lens giving him a view of the kitchen. It was empty. He reached through, unlocked the window, and slipped inside, his feet making no sound on the worn linoleum floor. The air was stale, smelling of old coffee, takeout containers, and the low-grade hum of nervous sweat. He could hear the soft, rhythmic breathing of the two sleeping operatives in the bedrooms down the short hall. He moved into the living room, which had been converted into the command center. On a desk, a high-end Alienware laptop sat next to a tangle of wires and external drives. The target machine. Alec and Anya were in his ear, their voices hushed whispers. "I'm at the machine," Marcus breathed. "The USB ports are on the left side near the cooling vent." Anya guided him. "Plug in the mayfly. Be gentle. Any sudden power draw could wake the machine from its low-power sleep state and trigger an alert." Marcus's fingers, steady as a surgeon's, found the port. He slid the mayfly device in. A tiny blue light on the device blinked once, then held steady. "It's in," Marcus whispered. "The copy has started." "I have a signal," Anya confirmed from the loft. On her screen, lines of code began to scroll as the mayfly's transmitter connected with her receiver array. "It's weak, but it's there. I'm establishing a handshake. Come on, baby, talk to me." Suddenly, a floorboard creaked in the hallway. Marcus froze. He melted back into the shadows behind a heavy curtain, his body rigid, his breathing slowing to an almost imperceptible rate. The technician stumbled out of his bedroom, rubbing his eyes. He walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and poured a glass of water. For a full minute, he stood there, his back to the living room, the pale light from the fridge spilling onto the floor. He was drinking slowly. It was the longest minute of Marcus's life. Every nerve screamed at him to move, to act, but his training held him fast. He was a ghost. He was not there. The technician finished his water, placed the glass in the sink with a soft clink, and walked back to his bedroom, never once glancing toward the desk where a silent digital heist was underway. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Anya's status," he whispered, his heart hammering against his ribs. "I'm in," she said, her voice electric with adrenaline. "I have full root access. I'm bypassing his encryption now. It's military grade, but I've got the key. Oh, you beautiful bastard. Orlov, I'm in your toy box." The files began to flood across the encrypted link. Anya's screen filled with data. The raw video files, the deepfake rendering logs. And there it was. A file named Nachtfalter _master V7.2. The source code for the algorithm itself. The digital DNA of the lie. "I have it," Anya breathed. "I have the core program and the generation logs. This is it. This is irrefutable proof." "Get it and get out," Alec ordered. "Wait," Anya said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "There's more. A hidden, triple-encrypted partition. Orlov wouldn't keep something this heavily protected on a field machine unless it was insurance." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, dismantling layers of code like a bomb disposal expert. "It's a black ledger," she whispered in awe. "Orlov's personal file. Every unsanctioned operation he's ever run. Financial records, bribes paid to his own superiors in the Kremlin, his escape protocols, his offshore accounts, the location of his family's safe house in Cyprus." "My God, Alec. This isn't just leverage on the Richter operation. This is leverage on Orlov himself. This is the key to his entire kingdom." "Copy it," Alec said instantly. "Copy all of it." "That's the problem," Anya said, her voice strained. "It's huge. The download will take at least another 20 minutes. Marcus, the sentry is due back in 10. The countdown had begun again. On one screen, Alec watched the data transfer progress bar crawl at an agonizing pace. On another, He had a live feed from a micro camera Marcus had placed overlooking the street. 10 minutes. 9. Marcus, can you sabotage their comms? Alec asked. Buy us a few more minutes. On it, Marcus whispered. He slipped out of his hiding place and moved to the apartment's main junction box. With a pair of specialized pliers, he carefully snipped a single, hair-thin fiber optic cable. It wouldn't cut them off completely, they'd have satellite backups, but it would force them to reboot their entire system, causing confusion and delay. 5 minutes. The download bar was at 80%. He's coming, Alex said, watching the feed. A dark sedan had turned the corner at the end of the street. It was the sentry. Anya, abort the download if you have to. We have the primary objective, Alec commanded. Almost there. 90%. Anya chanted, a mantra under her breath. The car parked. The sentry got out. He scanned the street before heading for the building's entrance. He's in the building, Marcus reported from the window. I hear the elevator whining. 95%. The elevator chimed on their floor. Heavy, deliberate footsteps in the hall. Marcus, get out. Now, Alec ordered, his voice cold iron. 98, 99. Done, Anya yelled, a shout of pure triumph. I have it all. The connection is severed. The Mayfly is now just a dumb USB stick. A key slid into the lock of the apartment door. Marcus didn't hesitate. He bolted for the kitchen window. He was halfway through when the apartment door opened. The sentry stepped in, his eyes immediately sweeping the room, his senses honed by years of paranoia. He saw the faint disturbance in the curtains, the slightly ajar kitchen window letting in a sliver of cold night air. He unholstered his weapon, the suppressed Stechkin, and moved forward with deadly purpose. Marcus was already on the rope, rappelling down the side of the building in the pitch-black darkness. He hit the ground just as the sentry's head appeared in the window above. A silenced shot hissed past his ear, chipping a piece of concrete from the wall behind him. Marcus didn't look back. He sprinted, a black shape swallowed by the labyrinth of Berlin's back alleys. Back in the loft, the victory was palpable, a charge in the air. They had it all, the proof to exonerate Richter, and the weapon to destroy his blackmailer. It's over, Anya said, leaning back in her chair, drained but triumphant. No, Alex said, his eyes fixed on the clock. It's not over. Orlov thinks he still has the winning hand. He doesn't know we've stolen his cards. Proving Richter is innocent is only half the battle. If we just release this data, it becomes a political firestorm. Accusations, counter-accusations, it will be chaos. Richter's career will still be in tatters. We can't just win the battle. We have to win the war, and we have to do it on our terms, silently. He looked at the live news feed on one of the monitors. Klaus Richter was scheduled to give a major press conference in 2 hours, just before the parliamentary vote. The world expected him to announce his full-throated support for the pact. The Kremlin expected him to announce his shameful resignation. Anya, I need you to do something for me, Alex said, a cold, dangerous smile playing on his lips. I need you to become Viktor Orlov. An hour later, Dmitry Volkov, the cultural attaché, received an urgent, encrypted message on his burner phone. It appeared to come from Orlov's command server in Moscow, bearing all the correct authentication codes. The instructions were precise and absolute. Nachtfalter is compromised. Hostile signals intelligence detected. Abort. Scrub all local data immediately. Execute sanitization protocol Delta. Evacuate the team via pre-planned escape routes. Await new orders. Panic erupted in the Pankow apartment. The technician frantically began wiping the hard drives, initiating thermite charges built into the hardware to physically melt them into slag. The team grabbed their go-bags and prepared to scatter to the winds. At the same time, another message, this one crafted by Anya to perfectly mimic Orlov's personal digital signature, arrived in the private inbox of Colonel Viktor Orlov himself. It contained a single attachment, a heavily redacted financial statement from a bank in the Cayman Islands. It showed a recent transfer of a large sum of money, with a cryptic note referencing a certain safe house in Cyprus. It was a single page from his own black ledger. Below it was a simple line of text. The board has changed. In his soundproofed office at the Lubyanka, Orlov felt a dread so cold it was like ice water being injected into his veins. His failsafe, his personal insurance policy against his own masters, had been breached. He was no longer the puppet master. Someone else was pulling the strings. His operation in Berlin was a secondary concern now. His own survival was at stake. He tried to contact his Berlin team, but their comms were down, their systems being wiped as per his own phantom orders. He was blind, and he was exposed. Meanwhile, Klaus Richter stood at the podium, the lights of 100 cameras flashing in his face like strobing artillery fire. He looked tired, but resolute. In his ear, a tiny receiver fed him a live feed from Alec. "They think they've lost, Klaus," Alec's voice murmured. "They're in disarray. But Orlov is a cornered animal now, which makes him dangerous. You can't just deny. You have to attack. Go on the offensive." Richter cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the silent hall. "Members of the press," he began, his voice steady and strong. "I am here today to talk about the future of Germany's energy security. But first, I must address a matter of grave national importance." He paused, letting the tension build until it was a palpable thing. "In the last 24 hours, my government has become aware of a sophisticated and malicious disinformation campaign, originating from a hostile foreign power designed to sabotage the North Atlantic Energy Security Pact." Gasps rippled through the press corps. This campaign utilized advanced digital forgery techniques in an attempt to blackmail me and subvert the democratic will of the German people. Richter continued, his voice ringing with righteous anger. "They sought to use lies to hold our future hostage. They have failed." He held up a tablet. On the screen, Anya had prepared a series of infographics, elegantly displaying a deconstruction of the deepfake technology itself. It showed the GAN artifacts, the rendering logs, the digital proof of the forgery, all presented in a way a layman could understand. It was a masterclass in controlled information warfare. "We will not be intimidated," Richter declared, his eyes blazing. "We will not bow to blackmail. The vote on the pact will proceed as scheduled, and I can assure you, Germany and its allies will respond to this digital act of war with the full force of our capabilities." He didn't name Russia. He didn't have to. The message was delivered. The gambit had been turned back on its creator. Days later, the pact was signed. The LNG terminal was approved. Germany's energy future was secure. In Moscow, Colonel Viktor Orlov was quietly reassigned to a meaningless desk job overseeing port logistics in Vladivostok, a political exile in his own country. His network was dismantled, his power broken, all because of an anonymous tip to his superiors about financial impropriety and a compromised network. A tip that originated from a server in Iceland. Alec Thorne stood on the balcony of the loft, looking out over the Berlin skyline as dusk settled over the city. His CipherLink X2 buzzed. It was a message from an untraceable, encrypted number, a new contact he had established. The message contained a single sentence, a quote from a file only two men now knew existed. The Cyprus